Hi, it's Chad. So today I am working on a little project that just showed up in the shop, and I'm going to show you what it is and give you a little insight into how I problem solve stuff. So, this right here is a piano bench that I built a while ago, and the client wants it to be slightly taller. So she originally contacted my woodworker friend to build this doohickey, and upon seeing what it was looking like, she didn't quite like it and instead wants it to be made out of metal. So here it sits. So if you take a look at this, it's flat on the inside, the wood bit. She wants it to stick or go in 3/4 of an inch, up 3/4 of an inch, in 3/4 of an inch, up 3/4 of an inch. That would mean I would need 3/4 of an inch by 1.5 inches and then 3/4 by 3/4 to make this exact thing. I don't have that. That's a specialty item to order a piece of 3/4 by 1.5 inches. So what I'm gonna do is cut some 3/4 by 3/4, which you can see I've already been doing, and I'm gonna just have it have a step on the inside. So I'm gonna stack them on top of each other. It'll have a step on the inside, but I don't think that will cause any issues whatsoever. I talked to the woodworker who's also doing the upholstery for the top of this. He says that's not an issue either. So that is the plan. As you can see, I've already started cutting some parts and pieces. I'm gonna take you along for the ride for the rest of this little project. So that means we need to go over to the bandsaw. For those of you that have watched my shop tour video, you know, but if you haven't watched that video, this is my jet. It is a horizontal bandsaw. It kind of points the wrong direction in the shop because of the way I use it. Normally, in the nice weather, I would have this dang garage door open, but because it's like 10 degrees outside, I got the garage door shut, and I'm only opening it when I absolutely have to make a cut that passes through out into the open space beyond the garage door. So I'm gonna throw this camera up on the tripod. I'm gonna show you what it takes to set an angle on the horizontal bandsaw and do a cut. If you want to make straight cuts, you leave the machine as it sits. If you want to make angled cuts to miter them, you flip open that lever right there, you grab the head of the machine, and you turn. I'm gonna push it all the way up against the bump stop, boom. That is a 45-degree cut. I have measured that to make sure that it's perfect every time. Then you grab a hold of the lock, tighten it back down, and you're ready to start feeding your material into the machine. So you notice I've got a piece of 3/4 stock sitting here. I've already cut a 45 on one end of it. So what I need to do is measure my length, flip the piece upside down so that it cuts the opposite direction because we're trying to make a box. Maybe I'll cut a little seam here real fast so you can see what I'm talking about when we do a mitered box. But I need to have the 45-degree angle cuts going in opposite direction of each other. I'm going to measure that. I know that this cut needs to be just shy of 38 inches. It's actually a 1/16 less than 38. I'm going to mark that. And now I'm going to go ahead and feed it into the machine. Now that I've clamped the material all the way down, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my head is locked into position. This is tight, material can't go anywhere. And now it's time to just press the start button and flip the lever that lets the head of the machine come down. So once it finishes the cut, it automatically turns itself off, and you can see that I've got a 45 here and a 45 here, and they go opposite of each other so that when we make our box, we have nice sharp corners. Okay, I took measurements and I got the top rectangle long pieces and the bottom rectangle long pieces already cut. Now I need to cut these shorter end pieces for the rectangle, so we need to take a quick measurement. 11, and 12. Alright, so we don't need this anymore. We've got all the measurements and everything we need off of it. Put it over here on the floor. And we've got two sets. We've got the smaller rectangle and all the pieces for the bigger rectangle. So first thing I'm going to do is go through and take the burrs and everything off this and clean the little bit of mill scale up that's on here and get it cleaned up and ready for welding. So I just said some terms that you might not know what they are. A burr might be hard to see, but a burr is this kind of sharp tab of metal that gets left after a cut. And then mill scale is this kind of grayish color that is on the steel when it's delivered. And we use a file to kind of cut that off of there or scratch that off of there so we get down to the shiny metal so that we can get good conductivity when we weld. Well, so a lot of times I would just use an angle grinder for this. This is so small that I'm just going to use a hand file real fast and we'll be done in a jiffy. Alright, so that's the beginning of the process of getting the material ready to go for welding. I'm going to call it a day because it's getting towards 4 o'clock and I got some things to do this afternoon. So we'll pick this back up tomorrow. Okay, it's the next day. I'm back here now to finish up this project we started. I'm going to go ahead and get out the square and things that I'm going to need to put this together. Got my square, got my bigger square, marker, got my welding hood, got my gloves. All right, welders over here turned on, ready to go. We are going to go ahead and start squaring these things up and put some weld down. We're actually going to start with the bigger rectangle first. So we'll start. We'll take one short and one long. Hold them square to each other. Get out our welder. So I start out by just putting a small tack in the corner. Ooh, that's a terrible sound. Once I put a small tack in the corner, I come back in here and I hold the square tight to make sure everything looks good, and it is actually square, which looks fantastic. And I hold both down so they can't move. I bump the square out of the way. I put another small tack in the other corner. Okay, double check. That looks fantastic. Nice and square. Didn't move. The joint's nice and tight. Okay, so that's the first one. Set it off to the side. Do the second one. It's hard to pick stuff up when you got your gloves on. So we're going to put the two halves that I tacked together and tack them together. Lots of tacking. So make sure I've got nice sharp corners. And I am ever so slightly out of square. I'm slightly obtuse in this corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tack the inside corner with the assumption that I'll be able to shove it into square by adjusting the other end slightly. So one tack here on a nice sharp corner on the inside so I can make it narrower. Carefully flip it around. So now we got to put this corner together. I want to see what it looks like. It's actually really square. Maybe slightly obtuse as well. So again, I'm going to put just one tack right in the very inside corner. Now before I go any farther, I'm going to eyeball this thing and see if it's twisted. Now I know for a fact that my table is not perfectly flat. It is warped. It's just a piece of 3/8 plate. So I can't trust that when I lay something onto this table that I'll make it perfectly flat. So the best thing to do in my situations when things aren't like hypercritical to be super square and super flat is just to use your eye and look down it and to see if there's any sort of twist in the material. If there is, it's so slight that it shouldn't make any difference when I go to finish this. Check my squares again. Really, really good. The amount that we're out of square is so little. That it'll never be noticed. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tack this all together, and then we'll move on to the next one and get it all tacked together, stack them on top of each other, make sure that they are mathing out to what we want them to be, and then we'll finish weld everything. Okay, they are looking great. They are lining up really, really well. They look to be very square, both themselves and to each other. The step back on the two layers is really close to what we had on the wood. I think this is exactly what we're looking for. So what I'm going to go ahead and do next is take these, finish weld them, grind them, bring them back here onto the table, and go ahead and weld them together. I've got these lined up with each other. I'm really happy with the way it looks. I'm going to go ahead and bust out the welder again and get these zapped together. That is fitting on there great. It's sitting nice and flat. I am super, super happy with that. Woo! Okay. Sitting on there. Get down nice and low. There is almost no gap underneath of any of this. And this isn't welded onto the base yet. The next step for me is to take the top frames that I just made, clean them up and prep them for patina and clear coat. Hey, okay, back on the piano bench here. Obviously there's a bunch of stuff on the table, so ignore that. That's another project I'm working on. What we're gonna do is very quickly go through with an angle grinder, actually with a cutoff disc on it, to get in real tight in these corners and clean these welds up that I did, make them as pretty as possible. Then we'll go through and grind some spots on the existing piano bench to get through the clear coat so that we can get a good clean weld. So, we're gonna get started. I'm gonna throw you onto time lapse so you can watch what I'm doing. I'll be back in a second.
Alright, you might have a hard time hearing me because I'm in a respirator, but I wanted to show you what these look like. So that's what they start as. Not a bad looking weld to begin with, but we're trying to make something really decorative. So I'm going through and I'm grinding them out like this. And I'm doing it with a cutoff wheel. And then I'll finish them with a hand file.
Okay, now that I've gotten those all ground out, I'm gonna go ahead and jump on the hand file and go through and clean them up as best I can and make them as pretty as absolutely possible before I prep this thing to have a patina put on it. Sit this back on here, get it all dialed back in exactly where I want it to sit. Make sure things look nice and square to each other. So now I'm going to mark where I want to grind off the patina and clear coat so that I can be ready for welding. Okay, now I got little white marks everywhere that I need to grind a little bit, and I'm gonna get that done right now. Change out our cutoff wheel that we were using and put on a flat disc. Let's get this thing scrubbed down, wiped down with acetone and patina. So I've got some rubber gloves here that I'm going to wear because acetone is some pretty nasty stuff. Also wearing safety goggles because I definitely don't want to splash it in my eyes. And I've got a Brillo pad and some cloths. And I'm just going to go around and scrub this whole frame down to get all of the pickling oil off of it, any loose rust, and ultimately get it prepped to accept the black oxide patina. Oops, making a mess. Obviously, it's important to wipe the whole thing down, but you want to take extra care on the surfaces that are going to be seen, which is all of the outside areas here. So after I give it a little scrub with the acetone, I dip this in acetone as well. I'm trying to get as much of that black pickling oil and stuff off of there as possible. Okay, once I'm done with this, I'll show you the process of putting the black oxide patina on it. Black oxide patina, a brush, a cup. Hopefully this shows up on camera pretty well. Does not take much. That is more than enough for this. You can see how it takes that shiny steel and gives it some dark colors, some purples and blues. If you leave it on there for a while, it'll like make it rusty, which we don't want to do. So as soon as we get to a point where we're happy and everything looks cohesive, I'll actually just take it over to the sink and rinse it under cool water for a few minutes, which stops the process of the black oxide. And then we rinse it with soapy water a couple of times. I won't bore you with this step, but I'm gonna go rinse this with cool water. Alrighty, so this is ready to get welded on here. You can see that these are all ground out. The patina really hides any of the last little bits of scratches and stuff. It's pretty darn good looking. I've got everything lined up, squared up the way I want to. You can see all my little shiny spots where I'll be welding from the inside, so you can't see how this is attached. And then we will be ready for clear. Ta-da! Fab work is all done on this thing. I went ahead and wiped it down. I had some lint all over it from when I dried it with a towel. It is ready for clear, so I grabbed my respirator so I don't breathe all this junk. I'm gonna spray it and get on out the door for the end of the day here. Let it dry while I'm gone. Hope you guys enjoyed this little quick tutorial on what it is I do every day, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!